Welcome to the Warframe Weapon Encyclopedia, where today we're gonna go through all the Mark 1 weapons. All of the MK1 weapons are available from the market for credits. You don't need to build them. Now there are 7 of them, 3 primaries, 2 secondaries and 2 melee weapons, and you should get all of them. Because on top of giving you a feel for different types of weapons so you can figure out what you like and what you don't like, they will also give you a ton of mastery when you max them out. That's what these weapons are for. You pick them up from the market, you have a bit of fun with them, you max them out, and you never use them again. These are starter weapons, and they are not good. So my recommendation is to get away from them as soon as possible. Now, getting the right mods for these weapons isn't all that important because, well, they're starter weapons. So the way we're going to do builds is I'm going to show you mods that are generally good for them, and if you have them, put them on at whatever rank you have access to. For the Braton, the best thing you can do is put on Serration for some damage and then run Stormbringer, Infected Clip and Hellfire so you get corrosive and heat. The Braton is the most well-rounded MK1 primary you can get. It is a fully automatic rifle that does decent damage at solid range, and it doesn't need a lot of help from mods to get going and get you through the early levels. So as far as starter weapons go, this one's pretty good. Next on the menu we have the MK1 Paris. Here I would recommend Hellfire since the Paris does primarily puncture to help you deal damage to flesh, followed by Serration for generic damage, Point Strike for more crit chance, and then Speed Trigger so you can fire it faster. The Paris is a bow with high damage per shot and relatively high crit chance for an MK1 weapon, so it's sort of a one-shot, one-kill kind of weapon. One of the biggest advantages of the Paris is that it's silent, so it won't draw enemy attention to you and it works really well from stealth. But since it's a bow and you have to draw it back before you fire it, the rate of fire on it is fairly slow, and the arrows do have travel time on them as well, so you have to account for that and lead your targets. I think the Paris is pretty great, and if you're a decent shot and you don't mind the travel time on the arrows, the Paris is probably the strongest MK1 weapon you can get. And the final primary you can get is the MK1 Stran. Here I would recommend Charged Shell with Contagious Spread and Incendiary Coat for corrosive and heat, and then Point Blank for damage and Tactical Pump for reload speed. I would genuinely prioritize Tactical Pump over everything else because the Stran is a shotgun that loads in 1 shell at a time, so a full reload takes quite a while. Luckily, you can interrupt the reload at any time by simply firing it again. The Stran has the shortest range out of the 3 options because you have pellet spread and fall off at the same time, but it's also the best feeling weapon. This weapon feels great. If you're a fan of big boomy shotguns in video games, I think you're gonna like this one. Moving on to secondaries, where we start off with the Furies. Here I would recommend Convulsion, Pathogen Rounds and Heated Charge for corrosive and heat once again, and then Hornet Strike for generic damage. The Furies is kind of like a baby Braton. It does solid damage, but a relatively good range. That's pretty much it. There is nothing else to say about this weapon, it's just a bog standard automatic pistol. The Furies is best paired up with either the Stran so that you actually have a weapon that has decent range, and or the Paris so that you can deal with groups of enemies, which the Paris isn't good at because of its low fire rate. And the secondary are the Kunai, where I would recommend Hornet Strike for damage, Gunslinger for fire rate, and then Convulsion, Pathogen Rounds and Heated Charge for corrosive and heat. The Kunai are throwing knives, so they pair really well with the Paris because they're also silent. And they have pretty solid DPS too. The main downside is that, well, they're not hit scans, so the projectiles have travel time, and they're also affected by gravity, so not only do you have to lead the target and kind of guess where the enemy will go, you also have to account for the knives dropping over distance. But if you can pull that off, they're actually pretty great. And finally we have the melee weapons, starting off with the bow, where I would recommend Northwind, Fever Strike and Molten Impact for Vital and Heat because the bow does primarily impact damage, and then Pressure Point for damage and Fury for attack speed. The bow is a staff, which is a strange sentence, I agree, that has good range, is fun to use, and the damage it does isn't half bad for a starter weapon, obviously. Out of the 2 MK1 melee weapons, this is definitely the more user-friendly one, but also the one that does less damage, because neither the crit nor the status chance are high enough to really do anything with this early on when you have basically no mods, which is not the case for the Furax, where I would recommend Pressure Point for damage, True Steel for crit chance, Organ Chatter for crit damage, Fury for attack speed, and then Molten Impact for heat damage. Now the Furax, as you have probably guessed, is the less user-friendly but more damaging options when it comes to MK1 melee weapons. The Furax does great damage, but it has less than half the range of the bow. The bow comes in with 3 meters of base range and the Furax with 1.25. But that doesn't mean the Furax is not fun. It's still fun to use, it's just that you have to be a lot closer to the enemy and it's not great at cleaving through multiple enemies at once. And that is pretty much it for all the MK1 weapons, so make sure you pick them up, have a bit of fun with them, but please max them out so you get all the mastery you can from them. Because the more mastery you have, the more fun guns you have access to. And I thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.